Now, welcome to another one of my Sunday commentary style videos, where I'll be a bit more candid and perhaps a bit off topic, though this week will very much be Star Wars related, and will tie into the series of videos I concluded yesterday, where I tried to outline what happened to the Star Wars fan base throughout the course of the sequel trilogy, just why it is so divided beyond the obvious fact that the movies themselves were rather divisive. And I'll start this out, as I sometimes like to do, with a quick personal story, one that will obviously be relevant to the whole video. So anyway, last April I went to my first ever Star Wars celebration. I'd always wanted to go to one, but they usually seem to be on the other side of the country, if not the other side of the world. But this time it was in Chicago, which is a short couple-hour drive for me, so I obviously went. And it didn't take me long to realize what celebration is really all about, which is waiting in one line after another for something. I'd even say I spent more time standing in a line than I did anything and everything else combined. And though I'm generally not the most outgoing person in a public setting, when you're surrounded by fellow Star Wars fans all at the same place for essentially the same reason, it's really not hard to strike up a conversation or to find yourself just becoming a part of one. And so while I was in line to get into the celebration shop where they sold all the official merchandise, a line that I was in for over 2 hours, I found myself in a large conversation that maybe 10 people were kind of coming in and out of at times. And this conversation was mostly, or started out, about The Last Jedi. And I was pretty much the only person in this group that really didn't like the movie. And before someone runs to the comments to say, "See Thor, haters are in the minority," I will point out that at other times I certainly did meet or heard talking people who also really didn't like that movie. Also, I'd have to guess that, in general, people that did like The Last Jedi were far more likely to go to a Star Wars celebration that year than those who didn't. Regardless, I found myself a part of this conversation, which I'd have to describe as a Last Jedi love fest. And so, you might think I would keep my opinion on the movie to myself here, or just kind of go along with the crowd or the flow, that I'd pretend to like it as to not ruffle any feathers or to potentially be harassed or anything like that, or just not say anything at all and quietly stand there and let the conversation literally go on all around me. Well, I didn't do that. Instead, I brought up and talked about many of the problems I've talked about in, well, countless videos that I've done. And for the most part, everyone in this little group of people was really cool with me. They didn't attack me or anything like that. Some of them were a little more passionate in their defense than others. I could tell some of them got a little more upset at me than others over some of the things I brought up. But overall, it was a civil discussion. And I could also tell some of them not necessarily agreed with me or my arguments, but they could see and understand them. A lot of them would say things like, "Okay, I get that," or "I get why some people wouldn't like that," or "I see where you're coming from now," and things like that. And ironically enough, at a couple different times, people mentioned all the hate videos on YouTube and how they couldn't stand them and that these people were destroying the fan base and ruining it for everyone and all that fun stuff. And not going to lie, there was this small urge within me to raise my hand at that point and say, I'm one of those people making those hate videos. But I didn't, and none of them, as far as I could tell, knew or suspected who I was, not that I'm really anybody to know or that they really care. Anyway, when they talked about all the online hate, I asked them what's the difference between them getting together like this and talking about why they love the movie and the people online who are essentially getting together to talk about why they don't like the movie. Why does one group have the right to speak but not the other? And of course the answer to that is those people are just being negative and hateful and so on, to which I pointed out that both groups actually come at it from a position of love for Star Wars. I said that those online who don't like the movie obviously care a great deal about Star Wars, otherwise they wouldn't bother to talk about it as much as they do, or as passionately as they do. Their goal in most cases is not to take away your joy, but to express their own disappointment. It's to, again, essentially do the very same thing they're doing right now, which is talk Star Wars. And look, I'm not trying to paint all Last Jedi defenders as saints here, that they're all calm, rational people that will have a discussion with you, because I've certainly encountered some online that are not. But by and large, they are just Star Wars fans, just like the quote-unquote haters are just Star Wars fans. That when it boils right down to it, we all just want to talk some Star Wars, and we all want to love this franchise. And that's exactly what we all in this little group did over the course of the next 2 hours. We talked some Star Wars, and once the conversation drifted away from The Last Jedi, which it eventually did, we all found ourselves in agreement over most everything. And any and all animosity I felt directed at me for not liking The Last Jedi just sort of faded away. And though I'd already known and realized this beforehand, but it became even more clear after this experience that, for whatever reason, People love to focus on what separates them instead of what unites them, and it's no doubt worse than ever these days. The line spoken by Anakin in Revenge of the Sith that if you're not with me, then you're my enemy is so on the nose today that it's frightening. That is the stance, whether they realize it or not, that so many people take over damn near everything, even Star Wars. Even though, as we all know, dealing in absolutes is a Sith quality. Anakin in that moment is being completely irrational. He's completely lost his way and can only see things from his perspective. He's so lost that he genuinely believes the Jedi to be evil and that Obi-Wan, his brother of all people, is now his enemy. And sadly, that's exactly how people are today. I've seen examples of people behaving this very way. I personally know people who have stopped talking to family or good friends because of a difference in political opinion. I know others who are terrified to express their political affiliation to a family or to friends for fear of being literally disowned by them. And the way people want to make swift and final judgments about everything and anyone and will not entertain the thoughts or opinions of others that may differ from their own is insane. Cancel culture is one of the craziest things I have ever seen, and by its very nature, it implies that people and their opinions cannot change. I mean, let's say you posted a joke on Twitter 10 years ago, and now someone spots it and you get called out for it. The implication is that it's not only what you believed then, but what you still believe today, that you haven't grown or learned a thing in that time, or that you haven't just flat out changed since then. Even though all of us, no matter how young or old you may be right now, can look back into our own past and say that we're not really that same person anymore, that for better or worse sometimes, we've changed, that our life experiences have remade us into who we are right now. And look, if we want the people of today to continue to grow and become better, and for the people of tomorrow to become good individuals as well, we have to learn real tolerance and understanding again. We have to treat each other and try to teach with compassion and stop trying to rule and control people with fear. Fear that you will be called out and canceled or labeled something horrible at a moment's notice if you make one mistake or say the wrong thing, or even hold the wrong opinion. We have to look for common ground and go from there. Stop looking at the things that divide us and look for reasons to unite us. And one of the things that's so interesting about what I get to do, which is talk Star Wars with so many people online, and keep in mind I read thousands of comments each and every week, be they on the polls or on the videos I do. Anyway, in most cases, I have no idea, nor do I care, and I don't mean that in a negative way, who you are beyond the fact that you are a Star Wars fan. Sure, sometimes the name someone uses when it's their own name or their own picture or whatever it might be, that tells me a lot about the person, of course, or who they likely are. They could still use a fake name, I suppose. But a lot of the time, it's a generic name or picture that is attached to a comment. If your username is #1 Star Wars fan, I don't have the first clue how old you are, what gender you are, what race you are, what sexual preference you might hold, or anything else. And again, I don't care because the one thing I do know about you, or feel pretty safe assuming, is that you're a Star Wars fan. And right away we have something in common. We have something to talk about and to bring us together. And this is how I approach everyone in life that I encounter, by not making any assumptions about them based on the way they look, and instead just looking for common ground and getting to know who they are. My way to fight racism or sexism or whatever ism it might be is to not care what you look like or what gender you are or whatever else it is. And I've had people in my day-to-day life, as well as plenty of people online, tell me that's not going to beat it. I have to care and fight it head on, not ignore it. That by ignoring it, I'm only making the problem worse. And I certainly do get that stance. I'm not saying there is no sort of fight to be had here. But my response to that is usually, well, what if, or imagine if, no one cared about what race or gender people were anymore? And there's usually this long moment of silence after I ask that of someone, because deep down they realize that is the only cure for it. That you can't put an end to it as long as we're looking at someone and making any assumption, good or bad, about them based on the way they look, or what gender they are, or again, whatever else it might be. At which point I usually get told about unconscious bias, that you're not even aware of the way you treat certain people. And my response to that is I always try to be consciously aware of the way I treat another person when I interact with them. Don't we all? Do people really put themselves on autopilot when they're dealing with other people? And sure, there are times you may briefly interact with somebody and give it minimal thought, but I can't be the only one that, when truly engaging with another human being, tries to see them as just that, another human being who has their own set of hopes, fears, wants, desires, beliefs, and so on. And if people aren't doing that, shouldn't we encourage them to start? Instead of trying to teach or train or reprogram people to not unconsciously treat this group of people a certain way, shouldn't we be trying to teach them or encourage them to treat everyone they encounter, no matter what they look like, as another human being? Shouldn't that be the ultimate goal, or am I missing something here? And maybe this is why it tends to surprise me when I get someone in the comments section of a video of mine who just goes off on me because I said something that they disagree with. And to a certain point, I can understand when I make a video like this one, for example, and someone just doesn't like my stance and thinks I'm completely off base, and they want to disagree with me, and maybe vehemently so. As I've said before, I'm choosing to make this video and to put it out there for others to watch, and I should expect some pushback. That's fair, and I have no problem with that for the most part. But when I make a video about Star Wars and give an opinion about a movie, and usually it's a negative opinion or a hateful one as they see it, and someone comes at me just full of hate, anger, and rage, and they go off on me, what I'll usually do is either politely, sometimes overly politely, the whole kill them with kindness thing, respond and perhaps clarify my argument or address their question, or sometimes I'll try to point out their hypocrisy, and sometimes in a snarky or sarcastic way if I'm in a certain mood. Because I can't help but get a kick out of people who are mad at me or mad at all the hate and toxicity I'm spreading, and then just come out completely hating on me and saying the worst things imaginable to me. And I try to point out the irony in them complaining about me complaining, that if all the hate in the fan base really bothered them, they'd try to extinguish it in a rational way instead of fighting fire with fire essentially, and just causing the inferno to grow. And oftentimes I don't get a response to these responses. And sometimes when I do, people will be actually very cool. They'll apologize and say they understand the point I'm trying to make. They just feel passionately about it, which I can understand and appreciate. A lot of the times afterwards, a great conversation will ensue. Other times people will just be completely indignant and come swinging back even harder than they initially did, not again seeing the irony that they're becoming the very thing they swore to destroy. Anyway, to start to wrap this up, my point is no one looks for common ground anymore. We look for a reason to be enemies first and ignore the things that may actually bring us together. And then we refuse to budge or listen to what the other side is saying. If someone challenges us or our opinions, we don't try to engage them or learn from them or try to see the problem from their side. We instead just go and listen to someone who will tell us exactly what we want to hear. Whereas if we just talked to them, we might find we're not so different after all, that we may actually have a lot in common with the quote-unquote other side. And one of the most annoying things that happens today is when people say, well, because this particular person, or in a lot of cases, this particular news network, said something, it must be wrong, false, or intentionally misleading. But their sources, the news channel they watch or the people they listen to, well, they would never ever do that. Their source is on the up and up and always speaks the truth. And I mean, do you honestly believe that? Do you honestly believe your side is always right and theirs is always wrong about everything? Are you really going to be like Anakin and assume that if they're not with you, they're automatically your enemy and wrong about everything? Because as I often like to say when I express my own opinions in these videos, don't just take my word for it. Look into something for yourself and discover the truth. Form your own opinion and try to discuss it with others. Be open-minded. That doesn't make you weak, it just makes you willing to learn. And I'll just end this video by once again saying that maybe the best thing about the internet is that it allows everyone to express their opinion. And maybe the worst thing about the internet is that it allows everyone to express their opinion. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say here. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars or whatever else. And until next time, thanks for watching.